Hey.
Oh, you can see it coming?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Oh, okay.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the Marty Heiser Show, where you always get the truth. What you need to realize is we're starting today, we're going to be talking about the hurricane response. And for many of our fellow citizens in the Nutmeg State, this is all they had to read by, to cook by, to get around the house with. We went back to colonial times, back to a time lit only by candles. And it happened because, as many of you know, a small hurricane blew through here on Sunday. And for many of you, upwards of 800,000 of you, although it's coming down, have been without electricity ever since. Tonight, we have Dan Carter right here. He's a state representative, and he is being hounded by a pack of concerned citizens, and he's going to come up with some answers. When is the electricity coming out? When can we blow out the candle? All right, now we're back to this way. And by the way, I think we're breaking some rules here, so...
It was artificial.
Anyone asked if it was an artificial candle. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That is those of you that actually have electricity and can watch this. This is a show for you. But how are we going to reach those people that don't have electricity? I don't know, maybe through the web or something like that.
We'll just run reruns for the next 5 weeks.
Okay, that's good. Let me just introduce everyone. As everyone knows, Al Robinson, the founder and publisher, if that's what you do with a blog, of Hat City Blog. Al, thanks for being with us.
How's it going?
Thanks for your perspective. Our star guest tonight, by the way, have you guys seen this guy's car? A great BMW with Connecticut license plates #2. But we shouldn't joke about it because you're a state representative, you're a leader in the state, and there's a lot of people that are concerned. So Dan Carter, thanks for joining us. Larry Ditkoff, we appreciate your perspective all the time.
Always a pleasure, Marty.
And thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Dave Streit is going to give us the financial perspective on all this.
Wouldn't miss it for the world. Now, I thought your license plate actually said no new taxes, but maybe
That was a
that's
bumper
on order.
sticker.
Okay.
That was a bumper sticker.
Okay, now if you want to join the conversation, you always can. The phone number on your screen won't work. The phone number you want is 438-2003, area code 203, 438-2003. And as we talk, there may be some people calling in, which we'll pull right on the air. But first of all, have you ever seen anything like this? And what are the people saying? You said you're getting a call or two regarding the hurricane response. And what can be done? What can you tell the people?
Well, you know, it's interesting because our phones are ringing off the hook in the Capitol. You know, it had been fairly quiet, I would say, last week. And this week, everything has just gone haywire. The number of calls are amazing, even from just my district alone. And I think everybody's feeling it. As this thing started, I think a lot of people had some patience because they knew it was coming. They knew it would take a while to get power back. But obviously what's happened is the patience is starting to wind down and run out.
Right.
You know, even as legislators, we're elected to help people out, and we're as frustrated as everybody else is. And as this response has unfolded, I've seen some good things and some bad things. You know, which we'll get into, I think, as we go along in the show. But I'll tell you what, it's crazy out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, is there a villain in all this? I mean, if we all just kind of take a deep breath and say, wait a minute, we had a Galdane hurricane. Bunch of trees, knocked out some wires. Everyone just relax. People are doing the best they can and be patient. Is that a fair thing to say, or is that not what people want to hear?
Well, it's definitely not what people want to hear. There's no question about it because, as I said, patience has kind of run out. I think the expectations of folks in the community are that we should be looking at having power at least by the end of this week, when there are many who may not have it well into next week. Now, with that being said, my background was safety in the military, and I've seen disaster response, and I know that some of the things that have happened here, like in any disaster, we're going to learn from. There are a lot of things that I think could have been done better, but I'm not really ready to hang everybody out and say, oh, they're just the big villain. I do think CL&P has a lot of improvements to be made, but I think there are also some things with respect to DOT and the governor, the way this whole thing came out, specifically the way DOT and the CL&P communicate. There are many instances where people were waiting on a tree crew, or the Connecticut Light and Power tree crew couldn't do the job. They had to wait on a DOT crew. And then there was a lot of lines being crossed, who was supposed to do what, when, where we had a lot of road crews out there just doing nothing. And I heard a lot of constituents talking about how they drive by, see a road crew sitting there, idle, doing nothing. Well, in one instance, they might be waiting on a tree truck. For instance, we have 4 tree trucks in the state with large booms or cranes.
4 for the entire state?
Yeah, well, they did.
A bit light.
Yeah, well, for instance, for one in Brewster, we borrowed one or rented one from Brewster, for instance, to get a major tree off of Route 58, up just north by the 302-58 intersection. It took a long time. They had to wait for this thing to come from Brewster.
Right.
So I think we're going to be looking at resources in the state. There's an editorial today in the Hartford Courant where they talked about how other states had more workers in the state per person without power. And I think that's something we're going to have to talk about as this unfolds. And there'll definitely be hearings. There'll definitely be people looking into this as we go.
All right. Al, we talked a little bit earlier today about this, about the response, about the perspective. What were your thoughts on this?
I think, first of all, we have to put this a little bit in perspective here. We're on the west side of the state. This was a hurricane. To recap a little bit, this hurricane happened when the new moon was going on. What I mean by the new moon is the moon's a lot closer to the planet, which gives you higher tides. Higher tides means higher coastal damage, which is why this is a coastal catastrophe. You look throughout the southeast corner of the state, as well as East Haven, West Haven, Bridgeport, anywhere it's a coastline, major damage was done. Again, it had a lot to do with the moon and the phase of the moon and everything. But you look at the west side of the state, and you go to the CLMP website, and you look at the outages. You look at the west side of the state, and you look at the east side of the state, where there's still some people out there at 100% no power.
Is that right? There's
100% no power right now, because there was major damage that was done. So it could be that there's a lot of resources and stuff being focused on these coastal communities who have been really devastated pretty bad. And like I told you, I was out on Sunday when this hurricane was happening, near the tail end of it, because...
Do you have some of that footage? Is that cute?
We have some of the footage. We'll show you some of the stuff in a little while.
Okay.
I recall, because I was in this area in 1999, I recall Hurricane Floyd.
Right.
Okay, Hurricane Floyd dumped 11 to 12 inches at Danbury Airport.
Right.
This hurricane dumped half that amount. All right, there was major damage that happened during Floyd compared to Irene. Bridges were taken out. Old Newtown Road was taken out.
Was there as much power outage with Floyd, or was it just a heavy rain and flooding situation?
It was a very heavy rain flooding situation. And in fact, if you look on Wikipedia, it's called one of the worst disasters in the last 40 years. It was a real test of the Still River channel system. Yes, we have outages in this area, but it was to be expected because they were telling us, CLMP was saying, look, we're going to have power out for about a week. Today is Thursday. We had 11,000 people out in Danbury as of Monday, and now I think it's half that amount, even lower than that. And we have to understand, these people are putting their lives on the line out there, risking their lives, trying to get power on for people. I think now is not really the time for people and politicians to go out here and complain and scream and call CLMP the bad guy. Let's get the power on. Let's work for the common good. We can always have hearings and look at these things later on, but the most important thing right now is to get the power on for the residents and less of the rhetoric.
John Fry has been sending out, he's the state representative from Ridgefield. This is his latest thing he sent out, to your point. While there are issues with CLMP's response, the crews here from CLMP and are from out of state are doing a great job. They're putting in long hours away from the family to help us out. If you have any opportunity, greet them with a smile and say thanks. I know they'd appreciate it. Same for the National Guard. There's National Guard that have been deployed, I know, in Ridgefield. He said some of these National Guard have just returned from a tour of duty in Afghanistan and other volunteers. Larry, what are your thoughts on this? And Dave, I want to get your perspective on what's happening as far as this goes.
Well, Marty, I think I was pretty fortunate because I live in Sterling Woods, which is a relatively new development.
High rent district.
Yes.
So be it.
Yeah.
And the cabling is underground, so you
Right.
don't have electrical wires, running outdoors. So you can't have a tree.
So no
fault line.
power outages
No,
there?
in my area,
Everyone's
no
fine?
power outages. However, outside my window Sunday morning, you could see some pretty big trees really swaying in the wind, going back and forth. Dan, it sounds like you would know. To what extent are the repairs that are going to be to the power lines? Would they consider perhaps going underground? Obviously, that's a tremendous expense for CL&P, and I understand that. But when you look at people still out of power,
Sure.
A week later, maybe more than that,
Yeah.
the loss.
Yeah.
there's-
I think you bring up a good point. That's come up a few times. Why aren't power lines underground? Obviously, that's something that is going to come up as we talk about this. And to Al's point, right now, I think everybody's focused on just getting the power back on for a lot of these customers because, a lot of people are having hardships. But as this moves forward, we don't need to hang a villain hat on everybody just yet. I think there's going to be a lot of things taken apart in this process and looking at what happened. And maybe it's something we can address with infrastructure. There are also other things that are at work here where they're talking about looking to recoup that money already. So I think the legislature is going to have a role in, watching what happens here soon.
Al Robinson had put together some video footage, so we're going to start rolling some of that footage of what people saw, or certainly saw as the hurricane rolled through.
You're going to come back to me.
Yeah, Dave. No, I want to come back to you. I want to come back to you right now. Hold on one second. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Who do we have on the line?
Pardon me?
Can you give us your first name?
Gerard.
Oh, Gerard, thank you very much for calling. We're expecting some calls from some other people. That's why I thought maybe you were one of them. But Gerard, what are your thoughts on the response to the hurricane?
Well, first of all, Jesus is the Lord, and I just want to say that you could make a couple of corrections right away. Number one, it wasn't a hurricane that hit here. It was a tropical storm. And the maximum winds were 65 miles an hour recorded, at least in Bethel, Danbury area, according to the Weather Service. So, the other thing is, and it's true. You can't blame the guys who work for CL&P, the individuals that put their life on the line. But the problem here is, if we had a real storm, a real hurricane, Category 1, Category 2, or even many nor'easters we've had has 80-mile-an-hour winds higher than that, and I've even seen summer storms that have put a lot more damage down in recent years, last few years. But, if we had a real catastrophe, then we would really be in trouble. There's no question that the problem here, as far as blaming people, that the government is to blame. They're the ones who have cut back, first of all, overspent our money in the first place, our taxpayers' money, and have cut back on resources, state workers, CL&P, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is these guys are missing in action. People that I've talked to in all this area here, Bethel, Danbury, Newtown, everyone I've talked to, no one has seen a CL&P worker. I know a street in High Street in Bethel where there's a power line dangling in the road for the last 4 days. It's still there. The police have not come out, and they have not even put emergency tape around. And when we had to, a neighbor there called 3 times. Finally, the policeman, after myself, saw a truck from Lestaco hit the power line and banged a branch that's already laying there. This power line is right across the road where cars can't drive under it.
Well, let me just.
Power line.
Yeah, I think everyone has seen similar situations. I know in Ridgefield, the first selectman just shut the power essentially to the whole town because there was, at least in the early stages of this. Just real quick, do you have a question for the state representative that's here?
Well, yeah, I guess it's not really a question of sort of a comment, too, but before you start saying, everybody's doing a good job and the usual political rhetoric, the bottom line is if there's any lack of fixing things up and response from from CL&P, the first people to blame is the government itself, and that's the state of government, and the state of government of Connecticut. And I don't like to see when they start passing off all these hearings and all this. The state of Connecticut and the governor is responsible first. So if there's a lack of response, then it's their fault first.
All
Nobody
right.
else.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your perspective. Thank you very much. I don't know. This is where I'm coming from. Katrina hits New Orleans. George Bush is a bum. How could he let that happen? Now, we have this tropical storm, as the caller points out. Should we start laying the political blame? Dave, what are your thoughts?
The
on
answer
this?
is no. I mean, it's only a week. Now, I agree with the
Not even
caller
a
on a
week.
relative basis.
Not even a week.
Yeah, and on
4
a
days.
relative
I mean, it's
basis,
ridiculous.
this was a relatively mild storm, right? So we have to look at this as a little bit of a trial run. So what do? We kind of look at this and say, study human behavior a little bit. And if you think about it, you learn that few people prepare. I mean, how many people went out Monday to try and buy a generator, right? The storm was forecast for 4 days in advance. People wait until the last minute. Then when the storm hits, they go to Costco and they buy perishable goods. I mean, people just don't think. You ever remember the story about Noah? How long was Noah building the ark before the rain hit? I mean, very few people prepared.
At that point, rain hadn't even happened yet.
That's correct.
It it came up from the ground. Actually, Larry is our Old Testament
Well, actually,
scholar.
we get that from Al Gore because he was there.
No, it's in the
No,
Bible,
it's in the
right?
Bible.
It's in,
Yeah, it's in the Bible.
Okay.
Anyways, go ahead.
So anyway, we live in a society right now where everybody wants instant gratification. You pull up at McDonald's, we want our food in 30 seconds. A really good friend of mine has a vending machine company, and he said that when people put their coins in the vending machine, if they do not get their product out in 30 seconds, they start attacking the machine. That's how much we demand instant gratification in our society. Now let me contrast that with my brother over in Nairobi, Kenya. My brother in Nairobi, Kenya calls up and says, "Yeah, we ran out of gasoline." It's really? Everywhere? Oh yeah. You got lines miles long at every gas station. You can't get in and out. I said, "Well, how long has you been out of gasoline?" "About 5 days." I said, "Well, how's everybody handling that?" "Fine. No riots or anything. Nothing." So there's a big cultural difference between what they're used to and what we're used to. I think we all have to take a deep breath and realize that we don't need instant gratification all the time, that people are doing their best. And look, we were up in 48 hours. And on Sunday night, when I drove...
That's in Reading.
Yeah.
Okay, your house in Reading, the power went out, but it came back in 48 hours.
And Sunday night when I drove to Bethel, I took a chainsaw with me in the car and I went up Sunset Hill and just cut cut a hole opening in the tree. A tree fell across the road, cut that one, pulled it out of the way,
Hold
cut
on
the
one
next
second,
one, and just made it on through. So it can be done.
All right, hold on one second. We have the first selectman of Ridgefield, Rudy Marconi, is on the line. Thanks a lot for calling in, Rudy. Right now we're looking at some footage of some flooding on TV, and we'll get your picture up. But what can you tell us is going on in Ridgefield right now?
Well, we just completed a briefing with Northeast Utilities and all the various department heads involved in the situation. And bottom line is tomorrow we should have about 32 line crews going to work. Right now people are going to...
Wait. That's a phenomenal number. We went from like 7 line crews to 32?
Well, we were up at 15 line crews today.
Okay.
12. We had 10 line crews working in town, and then we had 2 additional crews who were working with the National Guard to open up various roads that were still closed. As of this morning, we had 26 roads in town that were still closed, blocked by trees and wires. So the line crews, along with the National Guard, were able to open up the balance of the 26 roads.
Wow.
Tomorrow, today we had quite a few crews arrive from Maine, Colorado, and a couple of other states, totaling about 32 line crews for tomorrow. So we have an abundance of crews here tonight. We're hoping to see a good section of the town come on. Of course, these are the trunk line, Martys, the trunk lines along
Right.
state roads. So like 35, 35 heading over toward the New York State line. Branchville Road should be coming on tonight, and a good section of Route 7, because another one of the concerns was the intersection at 102 and Route 7, a very dangerous intersection, even when the lights are working.
Yeah.
Without any traffic lights. You can imagine what's happened. We had a very bad accident there yesterday involving 4 cars, so it'll be good to get that intersection, that light working once again. But with the 32 crews, we're going to see good progress, but we need to see more progress and we need to see more line crews. It certainly does sound like 32 crews is a lot. but only because it's relative to the very few crews that we've had. We've had not nearly enough crews in this town in time. And here we are heading into the fifth day of this situation, and we're just beginning now to see crews ramp up. To me, that's inexcusable.
Yeah, no, we had the latest, if I got your latest phone message, we were at 70% without power, now we're down to 60%. Is that the latest number?
Sure, that's correct. And when you go on to the Northeast Utility website, it'll show a percentage of customers still out, they'll call them. But when you look at a total of 10,650 customers on their site, that means 10,650 meters.
Right.
Okay.
So every house is 1 meter. So now after we've lit up a good portion of the commercial area,
Yeah.
and you're looking at still having 60% or roughly 6,500 customers without, you can multiply that times 3 and come up with a number of between roughly 18,000 people in this town who are still without power, and the majority of those people now are people with their own private wells. That's the problem we have, and it's a serious one.
Yeah, it's been creative. I have one question, then the panel would like to ask you some questions if you have a minute. But early on in this thing, I think you made a decision, and frankly, I don't have a problem with it. When you saw the wires that were down and the multiple dangerous situations that you and I guess in conjunction with CL&P made the decision to cut the power on a significant portion of the town. Can you kind of walk us through the decision on that?
Sure, that was on Sunday, and on Sunday afternoon we had received a call from Northeast Utilities, and at that point we were at about a 68% power loss.
Yeah.
And they advised us that several other towns were beginning to shut down once they got to 75%. I said we would review it and get back to them, that I wasn't even close to being prepared to make a decision like that.
Yeah.
And let me first say that no decision that has been made has been a unilateral decision. We have a team that sits at the table, discusses the situation, and we all weigh in on it. So
I just remember, I remember one.
I appreciate you saying that you made the decision, but as the leader of the town, I will accept the responsibility. But I want people to understand that it was not a unilateral decision. We have an entire table, a committee of people that sat and made every single decision. And the decisions that were made were based solely on safety. Now, Sunday afternoon, we have 68% power. We got to 75%, but we still had a main corridor along 35 that was able to provide power to grocery stores, pharmacies, doctors' offices, restaurants. And as long as we had that, I said, we're not. No, I disagree. I don't care what anyone else says. We need to keep it going. Now, 4 o'clock, we had lost power in that area.
Right.
So Chief Burford and I drove to survey that area. We talked to Stop and Shop. They said they had about 5 hours. It was gone. The entire town now is at about a 96% outage.
Right.
And at 4:30 on Sunday, with a 96% outage and soon going to 97, 98, we decided to shut down because you could not get to Branchville.
Right.
Emergency services came in and said, if there's a fire in Branchville, if there's an accident on Route 7, if there's a heart attack down there, we will not be able to get to anyone. We have exhausted every single side road. We've looked at every alternate way possible, and every single one is blocked with down wires and down trees. Northeast then said, if you shut it down, you can go ahead and open the roads.
All right.
We did it. We brought our equipment down. We pushed stuff out of the way to clear a path so that our emergency services had accessibility to the Branchville area of town.
All right.
People who lost their power prior to 4:30 lost it because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
Now we have restored a lot of power.
Right.
People on Branchville Road that thought they lost it because the town decided to do it, which is somehow a rumor that got started and is spreading like wildfire.
Wait, what was the rumor so we can set it straight? And then Dan Carter has a question for you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, what was the rumor so we can just set it straight?
Well, what I said is the question you asked.
Oh, okay. It was like,
Is that you made a decision in conjunction with Northeast to do something. I corrected that.
Okay.
To say it was a team decision that was made in the interest of safety.
no, I understand. I mean, I remember seeing, I believe it was an email that came out where you said, people are jogging next to down wires, and it seemed like it was a concern. Let me just.
That was during our survey of the town when we saw people, and here's a major, and this is confirmed by Northeast Utilities, people who use generators.
Yeah.
It's fine, it's great. I wish I had one. I wouldn't have ended up with 14 inches of water in my basement.
Right.
But people who had generators use them right away. If they're not installed properly, so you have a switch to block the power from feeding back out to the pole.
Right.
If that is not the case, what will happen is the power backfeeds to the pole. A transformer will take that power, multiply it, and re-energize the lines on the ground.
Okay.
That is our concern.
All right.
Even though we knew power was off, there are a multitude of generators running in this town. We had no idea whether the lines, even though power was off, the lines on the ground were safe. People were out riding bikes, jogging, they were going for walks, because it was such nice weather.
Yeah, I know. It's like Mr. Marconi, Al Robinson here, Hat City Blog, he has a question for you as well.
Real quick, Rudy. I know we have a lot of problems in terms of the power outages, but I want to find out about the roads and the bridges. Is there any were there any problems with the roads and or bridges, anything outside of the power that was attributed to this storm?
No, the bridges are fine. We didn't have the flooding in Branchville that was anticipated based on the forecast of the rainfall. We didn't get the rain we were expecting, although we did get a lot of rain. There's no question about it. We didn't get the 10 to 15 inches that was a possibility, so the flooding didn't happen. But the roads that were blocked, we had approximately 140 roads in our town that were completely blocked by downed trees. And I want to thank the National Guard out of Stratford and Major Dworsky and his team that came in and really knocked it out in good fashion. These guys went to work, and in 2 days we opened up every single road to make it passable.
Rudy, if you can give us, Dan Carter's here, and Dan has a question about how the state helped out and so forth. What's your thought for Mr. Marconi?
Well, hi there. How you doing, Ray? I just wanted to see what your thought was with the DOT's response in Ridgefield.
DOT response was slow, but they don't have a lot of crews. They did come down. Seth, one of the foremen on the tree crews, was excellent. They took care of a lot of situations, but here's where the problem developed. When there was a tree down in wires, CLMP has a policy that no one is allowed to touch that tree until they have what they call patrollers. And these are people who are trained by CLMP, come out, assess the situation, and then give permission to the tree company, the state, private, whoever it may be, to then cut the tree. The problem was we had to wait forever.
All right, well.
That slowed Seth up. So what really was the problem was Dennis. We had New Fairfield, John Hodge in New Fairfield had sent the trailer up for water, and actually the trailer went up on Tuesday, arrived at noon. They refused to load the trailer because the proper paperwork had yet to be filled out. Now this trader
Now we need to give Mayor Boughton a chance to call in if we can.
Go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, that the trailer, they did not load it until midnight, and they were told they could not unload it until 8 o'clock in the morning until the proper paperwork had been filled out. It was the Demis operation and our ability to deliver commodities and commodities distribution. I would have to say gets an F. It didn't happen.
Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time to call in. We really appreciate it. Can you give us a phone number where if people want help or assistance, where they should call?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, the answer machine was on, but anyone who has any questions from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. can dial 203-431-2351 or 2352.
Great. Thanks so much, Mr. Marconi. I really appreciate you calling in, and hang in there.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Dan. Bye, Al.
Take care.
Well, that's Rudy Marconi. He's got a lot on his mind. While the first selectman was on the phone, the mayor was calling.
He did have a lot on his mind. He got it all off his mind.
It's good. Well, I mean, it's a tough job, obviously, and tough situation, and he's trying to coordinate things. I mean, I don't know. I guess
Well, he's got a good head of the finance board in Ridgefield. That I know.
Well, look, I mean, I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with, looking at the politics of this thing, from this close on. But caller, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Actually, I wanted to, thank Al for all the wonderful pictures he's been showing. Most of us stay home.
Thanks, and as Lynn can attest to right now, you're looking at the video right now. I made it a
Look at the video. It's tremendous.
I made it a point to go out to certain areas where, if you know from Danbury, there's certain areas that absolutely flood, and I wanted to go there to give people a perspective of the flood damage, such as the Still River, Newtown Road right here. So
Great
it
job,
gives you an understanding of how bad the flooding was as compared to Floyd, which happened in 1999, which was a lot more extensive.
All right. So is this Lynn Tabersack?
No, Lynn Waller.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me for that. I'm very sorry. Well, listen, thank you very much for your call.
Oh, wait, I had another comment.
By all means, what's your comment?
Okay, well, I sit in on a lot of the HEVCO meetings where I hear about Demis and the Homeland Security, where they talk about what they can do in case of emergencies or bombings or whatever. Almost sounds like we should spend a lot more trouble and time working on flooding and this sort of thing. Like, I don't think the Still on Main Street over its cement.
That is an excellent perspective. I'm gonna run that by the state representative right now.
Well, I think she brings up a great point. I really do. As we've talked about, I think the common sense approach that we've talked about is before we start hanging people by the yard arms and killing all the politicians over this thing, I think we need to spend some time, get people back on their feet, and then look at this over time and see what we can improve on. There's no question that this could have been an ugly, ugly situation had it been a Category 2 hurricane. I think she brings a great point. We need to think about big natural disasters.
Joining us now is His Honor Mayor Mark Bowden. Your Honor, thank you so much for joining us. We've been talking about the hurricane response, and what have you seen in Danbury, and how's it going?
Well, look, we just about 5 minutes ago turned on most of the area around the airport, which is actually Representative Carter's district, so he'll be happy. But we still have, about 3,000 to 3,500 customers tonight, which really translates to about 6,000 to 7,000 actual people without power. It's been a challenge. Quite frankly, I'm very disappointed in the performance of CLNP during this very difficult time. Both their plans prior to the storm coming in and then the restoration plan was not really well executed. They did not have nearly enough staff on the ground. They had plenty of executives, a lot of executives that wanted to meet and talk, and I finally told them today, I said, look, I don't need to talk to you unless you're showing up with a chainsaw and about 50 guys to start.
I want to see guys in reflector vests and hard hats, not executives.
Exactly. And, Marty, one of the things the residents got to understand is that we cannot clear a tree that is entangled with wires or is next to a wire or somehow involved with power. Only CLNP can do that work. Now, we can do it under their supervision, but you must have a CLNP person on site while we look at that particular tree that's down. So we had all of the trees that we could normally clean up by 11 p.m. Sunday night, the city of Danbury did. The trees that were left over were ones that were involving power, and we've been waiting for CLNP ever since then. So it's been a really frustrating experience, both for our residents, obviously, for the city. Tonight we just, like I said, got a big grid lit up at about 5 minutes ago. That's a good thing, but we got a lot of work to do over the weekend.
All right, well, we're joined here on the roundtable by, among others, some of your favorite people are here. Dan Carter, Al Robinson, and also Dave Streit. And Dave has a question for you.
Mayor Boughton, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So the question is, preparedness comes at a price, and everybody wishes that they had their system up and running right now, and nobody wants to wait. But in reality, how much more per year do you think the people of Danbury would pay for better preparedness? I mean, to get everybody up in 3 or 4 days would cost a lot of money. I mean, where would that money come from to be better prepared?
Yeah, well, look, I reject the premise of that question, and that is that better preparedness is equivalent to more dollars in your electric bill. We pay the highest electric rates in the country as it is. We don't need to pay any more. I mean, you wouldn't go to a restaurant, eat a bad meal, and say, now, serve me another one, and I want to pay more, right? I mean, so at the end of the day, when you look in comparison to New York, to New Jersey, to Massachusetts, and look at their restoration process and times, we are definitely lagging behind behind some of the hardest hit areas. So I don't know if service is equivalent to the amount you pay for your electricity. I think the issue more is that there's been no infrastructure improvements. Remember, CLP and Northeast Utilities got out of the producing side of electricity and wanted to be deliverers of this commodity. Well, they have to mean they got to invest money in their infrastructure. That means they got to maybe not pay so many of those high-priced executives millions and millions of dollars in salary every year. Hire a few more linemen to be able to go out there to cut trees and do a lot of that preventive maintenance that doesn't get you in this kind of situation.
All right, Al Robinson has a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor.
Any questions?
Real quick, I recall, as you know, the hurricane that happened in 1999, they did some significant damage to the roads in Danbury. Old Newtown Road, the bridge over there was wiped out, and the residents over at the Jensen Trailer Park, there was propane tanks that were flowing down the streets. Outside of the power situation that we know is obviously a problem, how are the roads and the bridges in Danbury as a result of this storm?
Well, I think most of the roads have fared pretty well. I think that's a reflection of a lot of the investment that taxpayers have made over the last 12 years, and particularly our bridges. We've replaced 7 bridges in the last 8 or 9 years, and I think that paid dividends in a storm like this so they could handle the amount of water going through. We still had flooding at Jensen. We still had propane tanks floating away. We had to send CLP over there to shut the power off because Leahy's wouldn't reconnect the propane once the water receded unless the power was disconnected because they didn't want a spark to cause some kind of explosion. So those issues are still there. And anybody who tried to drive down Myra Road or tried to drive over at Kenosha, or even Newtown Road, knew that. But I will say that all told, big picture-wise, the city drained fairly quickly compared to 99, and a lot of that is based on a lot of the investment the taxpayers have put into it.
Well, listen, last question.
One quick thing. Jensen's is really a touchy issue because it seems like it's always a lot of flooding. Whenever there's flooding in this area, Jensen Park always gets hit a lot. What can be done about the flooding situation over there?
Well, remember, the Army Corps did I can never say this word right, but hydrological study several years ago and said, look, you got basically 2 choices. And the Corps their process would be the next part would be to fund whatever they recommended their study. The 2 choices were that you'd have to build a seawall on the side of Jensen that would go basically 20 feet total. I think it was 8 feet in the ground, 12 feet above the ground. For several, probably 500 or 600 yards. I don't have the exact dimensions, but I remember the cost being around $20 million to do that. At that point, you got to start looking about is that a good value in terms of investment by the federal government. The other side to that was that they said, well, or you could raise the units there up about 18 inches to 2 feet, which is kind of ridiculous because you've got seniors that live there and they can't step down or go down steps. A lot of them are handicapped and so forth. So there's not a lot of easy answers for that fix. One of the things that Jensen, the company, has been doing is as some of the units are being passed on, they're not leasing those spots anymore that typically flood out. So they have taken some of the lots, for lack of a better term, offline to try to minimize the impact.
when we get these kind of 100-year storms. But, it's definitely a problem area. It's something that the federal government, I've spoken to Congressman Murphy, the federal government would have to go to the next level in the Army Corps study, which is actual destruction of one of their studies. And, obviously we'd support that if they'd be willing to fund it. I just don't know if the funding's going to be there anytime soon.
Well, Mayor Bowden, thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate it. And is there any number that people can call if they need help or assistance? Anything that how they can get in touch with the services that are available?
There's, CLP has a 1-800 number. Of course, I don't have it here because I'm on my cell phone and I'm not at my desk. But it's readily accessible on the web, or I'm sure you guys can probably dig it up. It makes a difference if you call that number. That's I'm sure everybody's been looking at those outage charts that they put on their website.
Right.
If you call that number, they record that on the outage, and some people have said, well, they double record. They don't. So if you say 12 Jones Street, and Marty, you call and say 12 Jones Street, they only record it once. So.
Right.
But it definitely lets them know, areas that they need to deploy their resources. We're working with them. Like I said, today I threw a couple of the executives out of the office because they just, I had enough talk. They want hard hats, chainsaws, and crews. That's what we need here. And so, but we are informing them of all of these outages and all of the down lines and trees. But it's it's a painstakingly slow process. I don't know if you've had Rudy Marconi on. He's going through the same thing.
Yeah, it was. That's why I didn't pick up your call before. We had First Selectman on the phone already, and he's going through it. Listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to call in. Thank you very much. And I guess the word is that help is on the way, and it's getting a little better every passing hour.
You betcha.
All right,
guys, have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Larry,
Marty.
your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the thought that did come to mind, Marty.
Yes.
Welcome to the club when you said George Bush is a bum. I commend you for finally throwing that.
I didn't say
No, but I'm saying my
we'll go
point
to-
was that Katrina happened.
Well, the
and
point
there
I
was-
wanted to
and
make-
there was hardship. Obviously,
point I
this
wanted
is
to make
less
was-
intense.
Well,
but all of a sudden, it was all George Bush's fault. Now
The
this
reason,
time around, I guess
I'll
it's not
explain
so bad.
I'll explain it to you, Marty. George Bush completely cut the funding for the dikes at Lake Pontchartrain. That could have, at least to a certain extent, stemmed the catastrophic flooding that they had in New Orleans. That was a decision made by him. Okay,
Nothing was going to stop back-to-back hurricanes. Come on, Larry.
Well, the real problem that happened was just the response to that hurricane. When you had people on CNN getting better intel than Mike Brown, that's a problem.
But he did a heck of a job.
Yeah.
Heck of a job.
But again, that's
That was
just,
a big
you know.
Caller, you have a question?
I just want to say there's definitely lights up at famous Fenway with the Boston Red Sox winning 2-1 over the New York Yankees in the bottom of the fifth. Good show, gentlemen.
Now that's a great update. Here at the Marty Heiser Show, we want to bring perspective to all this. There may be flooding and carnage and people in danger,
right.
but the Red Sox are beating the Yankees, and the lights are on at Fenway. You can confirm that, sir?
Hey, let me tell you, we got lucky with this storm. It could have been a Category 4 rolling up the coast. And I'll tell you one thing, we ought to count our blessings because we did get lucky. Anyway, good show. See ya.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate the update. I think he was a Red Sox fan in that
so.
case.
I think the caller made a very good point. You
What,
know,
the
I
lights
just-
are on in Fenway?
Well, not that. I just want to reinforce this again. The marker in hurricanes in this current era, because I lived in Hartford during Hurricane Gloria, and that wasn't that was a bad situation. But I'll never forget Hurricane Floyd, because I can go down Finance Drive where I worked at, and that water was right up to the hood of my Jeep. That was 11 inches at Danbury Airport. This one was about half.
First of all, I'd like to see the Jeep.
It was a nice Jeep.
Okay. Caller, you're on the air. Do you have a question?
Marty, I do. It's Todd in Bethel, arguably one of the best casts that you've had on at one time.
Well, we got Curly, Mo, Larry. I mean, it's a rogues gallery here.
Hear no evil, see no evil.
Go ahead.
Look, that's what makes it such good TV, Marty.
Okay.
Two things I tried to call in when Mayor Bowden was there. We are paying the highest electric rates in the country. I'd like maybe Larry to opine upon if that's the case. And Mayor Bowden's right. We should hold them. We should hold them to a level of accountability that they do respond faster. How do we do it? Again, since we are the customers paying the highest rates. And secondly, regarding the dikes around Lake Pontchartrain, the city of New Orleans is below sea level. No matter how big that dike is, it's not going to help. So,
Hey, Todd.
Hold the line, Todd, because we want to come back to you. But what about that, Larry? The highest rates, and should we expect better service at that rate?
First, let me respond to the Lake Pontchartrain comment.
Oh.
If there was no need for the dikes, they never would have been built in the first place. I don't. So I take issue with that. With that basic premise. That's the first thing. And the second thing, in regards to what
We're
else,
paying the highest rates for electricity.
right.
Should we expect better service when these predictable catastrophes happen?
Marty, I really wish I had an answer.
The answer is no.
For the caller. Dave has an answer.
The answer is no, because all that money is going into the general fund. It's not going into making more reliable service and providing better energy for Connecticut.
Yeah.
It goes into the general fund. It disappears.
The one thing I would say, there's a rate case process that CLNP and Northeastern Utilities goes through, and that this type of inefficient response, should be addressed at that time.
All right.
So keep
Hopefully
Todd on there.
sooner, yeah.
So let me
Okay.
just tell you about Todd.
Yeah.
Todd's two boys are the equivalent of the Manning brothers in football, and his oldest son just got injured yesterday. So Todd, can you give us an update on how Joe's doing?
Physically, he'll recover. He has got a bone fracture at where his quadricep tendon attaches to his hip, but he will recover. The good news is that he's mentally okay, a little disappointed, but other than that, they're doing fine, and thanks for the shout out.
Okay, just don't let the cheerleaders sign that wheelchair, okay?
Hey, Dave, they dig the wheelchair. Dave's got interest in the company. It's the lightest wheelchair on the planet, guys. You need to have a separate show talking about that. It's a great piece of equipment. I tell you, it's real good medical technology, Dave. Nice job, and get a few minutes on the show about that someday.
All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, and good luck with your son's playing
Good
sport.
luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me
Great show.
Thank you.
Let me just one quick second. Again, I just feel there's a little bit of the CLMP bashing going on, and I just want to remind people again that there's 11,000 people without power, 11,000 units without power in Danbury on Monday.
Right.
We're
Out of how many? We talked about this.
there's 80,000 people in the
80,000,
city
okay.
in the city of Danbury.
So
Now,
Danbury fared better than other towns, which
So-
doesn't help you if your lights are out. But come to think
Yeah,
of
a lot
it,
better.
if your lights are out, you're not watching
now,
this anyway.
if
so
you look
that
at the
way-
CLMP map, you'll see that Danbury is not bad, and everything around it is bad.
Okay.
And now we're down to about, I think, 4,000, maybe even less. There are people on the east side of the state, and again, if you know about hurricanes, it goes like this,
Counterclockwise.
counterclockwise,
Right.
and people on the east side are at 100% right now. So I'm not trying to say the criticism of the CLMP is not warranted in some cases, but look, there's a lot of resources being used on the east side of the state.
Just out of curiosity, is the Democratic governor of the state responsible at all for the reaction time and not prepared, or should he get a pass? would you
No,
say?
look. If you're the chief elected official, the buck does stop with you. If there's something going on, you get on the horn and say, hey, get this stuff done. But again, look at this on the whole state scale. On the whole state scale, let's call some people on the east side of the state and let's have them talk about the complaints that's happening on the west side of the state, and I think they'll be a little pissed off, saying,
Quick
"What are you
question
talking
for
about?
Dave.
My entire town is out of
Before you-
power."
Okay.
It's 100%.
I want to throw in something too, because while I agree that we need to have a measured response to what we're saying
Right.
about CLMP and the governor and what's happening, this could have been a Category 4. We could have had major tornadoes. There are a lot of things, and it is widespread. However, in any incident, there are things that we have to start looking at to see where we can improve. And I think that's what's happening because of CLMP, because we have customers out there running around, constituents running around, and they haven't seen a CLMP truck.
Yeah.
Like they mentioned that. That has come up to me so many times. I was up in Lake Wapika the other day, and there was a huge tree still hanging on a line. And I'm telling you, the pole was about to snap.
Yeah.
And nobody had been up there to take a look at it at that point.
But
So
is part of this, I mean, and I hate bureaucracy. I really
Right.
do. But there seems to be some thought behind, before you send the guys in with the chainsaws,
Right.
the electric guy's got to say, yep, the power's off, go to it.
What
I mean,
Mayor
there
Boughton
seems
said-
to be some safety protocols there that make sense.
What Mayor
level,
Boughton said, it was on the mark, okay? That the city can go in and take so many of the trees out, but then it's up to CL&P crews to be able to turn off the power or at least get certified people in there who can work. Now, I think as a long-term outcome from this, we may find ways where we are able to let more local contractors go out and work on lines if they're trained properly. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can look at because I don't think we've faced something where we've had as many trees down across such a vast area. But again, that gives us an opportunity to see what we're doing wrong in the bureaucracy.
So Dan,
and that's the governor's part
How do
of
they
this.
prioritize who? I mean, I assume they say, okay, they look at the state and they say everybody's down. So they prioritize and they say Greenwich has to come up first, right?
I don't know.
Where are we going to get our tax revenues if Greenwich isn't
Question is, how do they
online?
prioritize? I mean,
From what I've been told, I mean, there's a couple of things they look at. Obviously, they're looking at hospitals, main businesses, grocery stores, just like First Selectman Marconi spoke about. You saw his rationale in his phone call. He was talking about opening up centers where it's going to help people as soon as possible.
Right.
And I think that brings up a good point because we have these small areas that are going to take a long time, these outskirts that aren't going to get power until maybe next Thursday. And those folks are going to be really hurting.
so here's my nugget of advice for people that are running these little generators. Number one, make sure they're outside. Make sure they're not in the garage. Number two, you only have to run those things maybe an hour every 6 hours. You do not need to run those things continuously.
Well, I agree with that totally, and I think one of the things that we will start focusing on is when these disasters happen, what is the best way to help people? Because obviously we talked about the governor briefly there and the leadership role in this. And I think that's going to be looked at as we move forward because we're talking about Demas. I mean, there were a lot of...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I must be the only guy that doesn't know what this Demas is.
You don't know what
And I
Demas
don't want to
is.
just
Come on.
nod my head and go, yeah, Demas, yeah. Well, how's Demas? What the heck is Demas?
Basically,
I'm sorry.
Department of Emergency Services for the state.
gotcha. Okay.
So it's our
Exactly.
version of FEMA,
Forgive
we'll
okay,
say.
not FEMA. FEMA
Yeah.
I know, but okay.
But it's our version.
I apologize.
And there were a lot of issues where, like
So what does it stand for, Demas?
what is it?
Department?
Department of Emergency Services. Did I get that right?
Department
it might
of
have
Emergency
been changed or combined by now. But the most important thing is
This doesn't sound as good as Dema.
what happened. I think in that instance, there's a lot of reports where the food and the water and things that needed to be given out were kept consolidated and weren't readily available to people. Where people, let's say in Reading, had to go up to Oxford or East Hartford to get help. First Selectman Marconi mentioned that they weren't able to get a Demas delivery unless they got their own semi-truck and drove it up there, their own tractor trailer.
Yeah, okay, so that was wrong.
that's going to be a big issue, I think, as this moves forward. And
And they have a union driver too.
probably so. Yeah, prevailing wage.
I mean,
Yeah.
forgive me for bringing this perspective, but whatever happened to sort of a rugged individualist, the self-reliant John Wayne, we're going to be fine,
Yeah.
Buck up, cowboy, it's a hurricane, the lights are eventually going to come on. Until then, let's light some candles and play Monopoly as a family and not just sit here and on our, websites and talking and stuff.
Those guys were ruled as sexist and they were made illegal.
No.
Sexist? Wait, really? Are they,
Well, I think
you're a congressman. You say your phone's ringing off the hook. People are complaining, stuff like that. I mean, my heart goes out to you at some level. But I mean, at some point, hey, we had a hurricane.
You bring up the best way possible, I think, to start closing us out from my perspective anyway. Let's talk about the people who stood up. Because I know there are a lot of people who are standing up and volunteering, who are working the high schools to make sure people have showers. There are people coming out of the woodwork to volunteer for the fire departments, bring them food. I watch people go out and give food to the crews on the lines. So there are a lot of people standing up in this who have that individual spirit, and I think it's very heartening to see that. And my thanks goes out to all those tonight who are listening to the show.
Yeah, they're the true heroes and the true heroes in this thing, and we don't talk about them enough. The person who just say, "Hey, I'm going to go out and help my fellow man," and we should be talking more about those people and what they're doing to help out your neighbor who is an elderly person or whoever, as opposed to slamming CLNP or it's the government or
the government isn't doing enough for me. Why
Hurricane. Final words.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Are you done?
No, well, just real quick. Hurricane Gloria, I lived outside of Hartford back there in the 1980s. When Hurricane Gloria hit, I was out of power for a week, and I'm outside of Hartford.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I mean, we're
But
talking
you made
4
it
days.
through.
Made it through okay?
It made you a better man, a good character.
He walked uphill to school both ways.
Well,
Yeah, both ways.
I learned about rechargeable batteries and stuff. No, we'll be okay. Everything will be fine.
Stuff happens. Our forefathers, came over here on a covered wagon. Well, I guess when you're in Chicago, they did.
So here's the final word. It is terrifying to me that somehow or other this event is going to lead to more government regulations, because that will breed greater inefficiency and cost us all dearly. So you got to hope that somehow or other we resist this urge to create all these regulations and penalties and absolutely destroy the economy even further.
Such as what?
Such as what?
You're just associated with Irene?
No, what I'm saying is all of a sudden you say we have to have better preparedness. So we have to have a system in place that guarantees everybody service in 4 days. You know what? That's going to cost billions of dollars.
That's not a reasonable request. That shouldn't be.
Well, I think that's his point.
But okay, here's my point on government regulations. Team Obama regulates goat herders in the workplace. They came up with 15 new regulations for goat herders. Let me tell you, this is a government that wants to regulate everything.
It wouldn't be a Marty Heiser show if we didn't come around to somehow.
We've already talked about Bush and Obama. And
it's funny because I don't hear anybody saying anything when, and I'll bring up your former state of Kansas, when Sam Brownback decided.
Chicago, but okay.
You were Kansas.
Well, I'm from Chicago.
The whole Midwest is a big cornfield, and they get mixed up.
No,
don't worry about it. Go right ahead.
With abortion clinics, and they had to have a size of a utility closet. That was regulated. How far the bathroom was going to be from
We're
the
talking about
examining
an abortion
room.
clinic?
Yeah, there were explicit rules put in Kansas.
Well, we certainly have
listen.
gone far afield from a little bit of flooding to abortions, and
the point is well taken that we have to be very careful about over-regulating because of what's happened. And I think the Mayor Boughton made a great point. Before we turn around and start looking at spending more money on the process, let's get in, find out what went wrong, what we can do better. Let's take a measured response to this and make it better for the constituents.
And a lot of the problems have to do with the communication.
That's a lot of it.
That's a lot of it.
I mean, I talked to DOT crews out on the road, and I talked
what's going on.
We have great CLP crews, and we have people from Texas, Tennessee, all across the South who are up here working, and I've talked to a lot of them, and on both sides they agree that the communication is a big issue.
Right.
So I think that's something that the leadership of the state's going to have to look at.
And one thing, a silver lining on this whole thing, and those of you at home, I think in the vast viewing audience, I think you'll know, basically when the lights go out like that, all of a sudden you have to talk to your kids. You have to sit down at a dinner at a table that's just lit by candles. You have to you get those board games out that no one has played in a long time because you're all watching, VH1 and reality TV. That's what they're talking about. In 9 months from now, there'll be a lot of little babies named Irene. So really, if your sex life didn't take an uptick during this hurricane, I just think, what do the Democrats call it? A wasted crisis. Don't you agree?
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste.
So those of you with your significant other out there, take this time. It might be another hurricane before magic happens. But I think it's going to be okay. What we're hearing from the leaders, I want to thank Mr. Marconi, Rudy Marconi, for coming on. I want to thank Mayor Boughton for coming on. It sounds like the fix is in. The fix, when I say the fix is in, not anything untoward, I mean the electricity is being fixed, and we're coming, the power is coming back. Take this time to enjoy time with your significant other or your family, and just realize that you'll get a chance to see how life was when it was lit just by candles. Thanks for joining us. Next week or the week after, we're going to do a whole show on transplant. We're going to see a guy here who has a triathlete's heart pounding in his chest, and you might meet the family of the person that donated that heart. So it's going to be an interesting show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. And for all of you that still don't have your power, you're not watching now, so I don't even care. We'll see you next Thursday night at the Marty Heiser Show, where you always get the truth. Good night.